On June 6, 1991, my son McQuinn was brutally murdered with no mercy by NEAL Spencer. McQuinn was 15 years old at the time he was murdered, and NEAL Spencer was 22 years old. Mr. Spencer murdered my son in our own home. Early that morning, I came home and found my child full of blood, laying on the living room floor. Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
We are about to watch the parole hearing of the man who did that to her son. But before we do, we're going to take a blast to the past to watch his commutation hearing, because he had a life sentence. He had no chance at parole. So he's going to have a hearing to see if they can make a recommendation to the governor to give him this parole hearing. So with that, let's jump in.
You are NEAL Spencer. Your DOC number is 300641. You're here before the pardon board this afternoon seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in Jefferson Davis Parish in August of 1991. You received a life sentence for a second-degree murder conviction. Is that information correct, Mr. Spencer?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, would you answer Mr. Marabella, please?
Good afternoon, Mr. Spencer. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. My name is Tony Marabella. Your case was assigned to me, so I'll be the first one to chat with you today, okay?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Spencer, how old are you today?
I am 51 years old.
And how long have you been in prison?
30 years and I think about 9 months.
And my calculations, I believe you were 21 at the time this crime was committed. Is that fair to say?
I was 20 years old. 1 month later, I turned 21.
I got you. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the crime itself. Tell me what happened. Tell me what you did and why you did it.
Me and McQueen had a kind of like a little business deal with drugs, and he was supposed to sell the drugs for me. First of all, I was a drug user at that time, and I didn't want to keep possession of it because I was going to end up using it. And I ended up using the drugs that I had in my possession, and I went back and asked him for the drugs that I had that gave to him, and he refused to give them back to me, saying that he wouldn't be able to make any money off of it. So we got into an argument behind it, and the argument led into a fight. We got into a wrestling match and punching match a little bit, and I remembered I had a knife in my pocket. I took it out and I stabbed him. That was the main of the whole situation.
And what drugs were you using at the time?
Crack cocaine.
When did you start using drugs? How old were you?
At about 17. I was about 17 years old.
When did you start using?
When did I start using?
Yeah.
At about 17.
No. What did you start using? I'm sorry. What drugs did you start on? Marijuana? Most people start on marijuana. Did you use marijuana initially and then move on to other things?
Yes, sir. I started using marijuana and it eventually ended up into crack cocaine.
How often were you using crack cocaine up until this crime occurred?
Well, it was pretty regular because I kind of started losing a lot of family members. They didn't want to be bothered with me, so I was kind of like living pretty much in the streets and from house to house, from friend to friend, relative to relative. So it was pretty regular. I was using it like every day.
You said earlier you were a drug user. Do you consider yourself to be a drug addict?
Yes, sir.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the programs that you've taken in prison dealing specifically with your substance abuse, with your addiction. Tell me what program you've taken.
I've taken drug substance abuse.
You took Living in Balance. What specific substance abuse programs have you taken?
That's the only one I took right there, sir.
Living in balance or substance?
The living imbalance and substance abuse.
Have you done anything involving the 12 steps?
No, sir.
Mr. Spencer, I read with interest, I think, and in part of one of your statements, you said that you really need a more extensive drug treatment program. You believe that?
Yes, sir.
A long-term drug treatment program?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any particular plan? What would be your plan? Let's assume for the sake of argument, you were able to get out of prison in the future. What would be your plan to stay sober?
Well, I talked to my sister and I had asked her to try to locate a few drug programs out there in Houston, Texas, where I probably would be living. And she said she would do that. And I want to try to join a few of those programs, get involved as much as I possibly can. I like to share my testimony with a lot of drug users today out there on the street. A lot of the younger guys at around the same age that I was at that time, I know they're going through a lot of problems. I'm also doing that right now as we speak on the West Yard. I talk to a lot of guys that's on drugs and stuff, and I try to help them. They have a really good program on that side. I try to lead them and direct them into that program. I also facilitate a substance abuse class inside of Walnut 4, which is a military dorm. And we talk amongst ourselves. We pray together. We just talk about people that want to, if they have an urge to use drugs, and we try to work with each other in that program.
But you've got a good awareness of it. You just think you need some more personal treatment yourself.
Personal treatment myself, as well as intermeeting with a lot of other users as well.
AA needs, that sort of thing.
Yes, sir.
You've taken Thinking for a Change, Living in Balance. You're part of Malachi Dads?
Yes, sir. I've taken Malachi Dads.
Okay. You're part of the Lifers Association?
Lifers Association, yes, sir.
Now, you've done a lot of faith-based stuff. Talk to me a little bit about your faith-based work.
Well, I had in order to get inside of the Baptist New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, I had to take a 2-year course in faith-based programs, and I took that as well before I got inside of the Bible College. A lot of the programs are in churches that's already formed here inside of the prison. I just try to make myself available. After I graduated, I'm an inmate minister, and I try to talk to a lot of guys. I'm at churches when before the pandemic, I was at a lot of churches and talking to them, sharing my testimony with them as well.
Did you finish the NOTBS training?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you graduate?
Yes, sir.
When was that?
I want to say in 2000 and, sir?
Roughly.
I want to say around 2018.
What is your trustee status?
Class A.
And you've had 17 write-ups in 30 years, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Last one was in 2008.
Yes, sir.
What do you think has been the most important thing that you've learned since you've been in prison?
I've learned how to be more mindful of the things that I do. I've learned how to communicate better with the other people around, the other inmates around. As an inmate minister, I get a lot of one-on-one time with a lot of the brothers here inside of the prison. I try to do the best that I can to help them. I've learned how to be a giver instead of a taker. I've learned how to be a good listener, and I've learned how to just follow directions,
What would you say to the family of the victim in this case about what you did?
I would say to the Walker family that I'm very remorseful, that every day I always think about McQueen or what I did. I wish there was some kind of way that I could take it all back and do it over, that it would be completely different. And I ask that they can find it in their hearts to forgive me.
Mr. Spencer, I don't see any other arrests. Have you ever been arrested for anything before this, besides this charge?
In a juvenile, I had a shoplifting charge.
Other than that?
No, sir.
Let me ask you a question, and I think I read your report correctly, and if I did, it's amazing. This crime occurred on June the 6th of 1991. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you pled guilty on August the 5th of 1991?
Yes, sir. I think it was in August.
2 months? From the date you were arrested to the time that you pled guilty to second-degree murder was 2 months?
Yes, sir.
You had a lawyer, obviously, huh?
State-appointed lawyer. The lawyer told me the first time I met him that if I didn't plead guilty, that they would give me the death penalty. So I took the plea deal.
All right. Warden, can you tell us anything about Mr. Spencer?
Just to back up what we've been discussing here, he is an inmate minister. He is on the West Yard. He is doing some work with our sobriety norm, working with those offenders in that arena, and been doing good work for us.
Great. Thank you, sir. Chairman, that's all the questions.
Thank you. I don't see any questions, so we'll ask our folks who are here in support for their comments. Could we hear from Ms. April, please?
Good afternoon. I'm April Valiant. I'm NEAL Spencer. I'm here, it's myself, my husband. I have 2 children. My brother is my other older brother is also here in Houston. We all have support for him. I'm able to support him financially until he gets on his feet, and whatever help he's needing, myself and my group to fully help.
All right, thank you, ma'am. We appreciate your participation. Could we hear from Mr. Jerry J. McKinney?
Good afternoon. As I think about what I'm going to say, I can tell you that Mr. Spencer has been an inspiration in my life. He's been a positive person to help me board. In some of the toughest times of my life, losing my father, my wife and I miscarrying with twins, he was always an encouragement to us. When I began to reflect on what is being done as far as the whole system, the thing is to prepare people in prison for release, which is something that is the part of the philosophy and the goals with the Louisiana penitentiary system. Also to further rehabilitative efforts by providing behavioral changes and helping to increase the odds of when an inmate is released to be in society. All these things I can absolutely say without a doubt, Mr. Spencer, by leaps and bounds, will be able to do. He does not pose any threat going forward into the community, into the neighborhoods. There is genuine remorse. And for him to be released, it would be a blessing. It would also be a testament to the system and all the things that have been put in place to rehabilitate, to make people aware when they are released on what they should do, that they will not go back and they'll be able to help others. And I appreciate your time for allowing me to speak on his behalf.
Thank you, sir. Devin Castillo. Sir, you're on mute. Your microphone's on mute.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Devin Castile. I'm a therapist at the Louisiana Treatment Center of Rehabilitation in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm also a friend and a cousin of NEAL. Approximately 30 years ago, me and NEAL chose some paths that only lead to destruction and incarceration. His led to incarceration for life, and mine led to a host of consequences. I've been shot twice in the head, twice in the chest. I've been a prisoner numerous times. Throughout our last 30 years, I would always get discouraged at times, and NEAL would always call, and he would always tell me to keep going, that God had a plan for me, that I had a purpose in life. In 2 weeks, I'll have a criminal justice degree with human services. If NEAL was afforded this opportunity to get back in the world, I think he can make a tremendous impact on people. He can stop the suffering and the pain of a lot of people if he was given the chance. NEAL record speaks for himself. He's been an impeccable inmate for 20 years. If NEAL were awarded parole, I have resources that will connect him with the 12-step program in Houston, Texas. I also have resources that will connect him with the sponsorship program. I also have resources that would allow him to enter an intensive outpatient treatment program in Houston, Texas. I want to beg the board this morning for his mercy, and also my friend, Miss Deborah, and Mr. Robin, because they're my friends also.
I think we've lost your audio, sir. Thank you, Mr. Castile. Thank you. We'll move on to those who are here in opposition. Could we hear from the DA's office, Ms. Thibodeau?
Good afternoon. My name is Tori Thibodeau, and I am an assistant DA with the Jeff Davis Parish DA's office. It is our position that the family of the victim deserves justice. And to this family, justice means Mr. Spencer serving the entirety of his sentence. We have submitted a letter detailing our opposition, and we're going to defer to that letter at this time and to the family of the victim. Thank you.
Ms. Deborah Walker, please.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm Deborah Walker, the mother of McQuinn, who NEAL Spencer murdered. And I'm full right now. After 25 years, he finally asked for an apology or for forgiveness. And I've been forgiving him. I prayed about it, that the Lord gave me the strength to forgive him, because what he did was his heart. He did it out of, he challenged, he meant purposely to kill my son. He came to my house and murdered him and left him in my house. He didn't murder him on the street. He came by, and the knife he killed my child with, he got it out of my cabinet. That was a steak knife. And then he put it on the tree outside. I found my baby full of blood. And what he did to my twin brother, Robin, I am still in anguish. He said in his letter he wished he could take McQuinn's place. Well, it's a start by respecting what they gave him. They gave him life without the possibility of parole. And I'm satisfied with that. And I can't talk anymore. I want my son to clarify, shed light on this, his twin brother, please. Go ahead, Robin. His name is Robin.
I mean, I really don't have a lot to say. I can understand going to prison because I've been to prison before and I did a lot of time. And I know that people want to get out and have a life. I understand that, but sometimes we make decisions that we got to pay for. And that's just the bottom line of it. And I don't necessarily agree with the story that he told about as far as somebody selling drugs for him, because we know the truth. But that's the past as far as, what took place, because whatever happened, happened. It's just that, sometimes you got to pay what you got to pay for what they gave you.
Consequence.
That's all I really got to say.
Thank you. Thank you both for your comments. We'll ask Mr. Spencer now. Do you have a statement, Mr. Spencer? that you'd like to make before we vote?
I just want to thank everybody for coming today and taking time out of their lives to show up, support me. And again, to the Walker's family, I thank you for forgiving me. I really do. I appreciate that.
All right, sir, I think we're prepared to vote. We're going to start with Mr. Marabella.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to start out by thanking our speakers here today, especially the family of the victim, Mr. Walker, for their courage to speak here today. I also recognize the district attorney's office, the assistant district attorney, doing her job, and I appreciate what she had to say, and all the supporters here today. This is a horrible crime. There's no question about that. And that is certainly a factor that we take into account, at least I take into account when I make a determination. This crime occurred in 1991, and I still am very surprised that within 2 months, this case was resolved by plea. That's certainly an acceptance of responsibility very quickly, and I understand that. I think that you've been very honest and straightforward today in what you had to say to us, and I suspect that you have changed considerable amount in the last 30 years. You have taken a lot of courses, a lot of faith-based courses. The warden has indicated that you do a lot of work there with the faith-based community, as well as with the substance abuse community, which is, as you described yourself, as an addict. You are a trustee, you've earned your GED and more education besides that. You're a member of the Lifers Club. You've done a lot of very positive things. That does not take away from what you did. That doesn't take away from the crime that you committed. Nothing will ever take away from the crime that you committed. You've indicated to me that you believe you need some more substance abuse or some personal substance abuse. But as I listen to you, the things that you've done, the work that you're doing with substance abuse, you're well on your way with that. Having said all of those things and recognizing law enforcement opposition and victim opposition, you have a low risk. It would be my vote today to commute your sentence to 99 years and make you immediately parole eligible, with the understanding, and again, it's just my vote, with the understanding that you might be able to apply for parole, but during that time, get into a long-term substance abuse treatment program so you can get what you think you need in addition to what you already have. So that's my vote today. Good luck to you.
So thank you.
Mr. Marabella, Mr. Freeman.
I want to echo a lot of the same things that Mr. Marabella said. You have done a lot while you've been in prison, and you've helped a lot of other people. I also vote to commute your sentence to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Ms. Jackson?
Ms. Spencer, this really was a hard crime. The victim was only 15 years old, and that's hard. But our job is not to make the decision based solely on the incident itself, but to look at the whole picture and look at the person that you have become. And the thing that has impressed me most is not only that you've done some things to work on yourself and to change your thinking and change your behavior, but you have served other inmates. You work as an inmate minister, you work in the sobriety dorm. And so not only are you taking what you've learned for yourself, you're giving that out to other people, and countless other men will be impacted by that. So my vote today would be to grant commutation to 99 years and with immediate parole eligibility without recommendations of the government. Good luck to you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Mr. Roden?
Good afternoon, Mrs. Spencer. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Good. Mrs. Spencer, your case is pretty difficult for me. I tried to take an imaginary scale and try to weigh the good against the bad. You have a pretty good disciplinary record. Last disciplinary record was in 2008. You've been incarcerated for 31 years. This is your only conviction. Matter of fact, this is your only arrest. You do community service, a minister caring to the persons that are addicted. You have a low risk assessment. You have a good transition plan. In Houston, Texas, which is sister. On the other hand, we have expressed opposition for the DA's office, law enforcement, and the victim's mother and his twin brother. Immediately, you said you need additional substance abuse program. I think the substance abuse program that you're getting already, you don't realize is when you minister to those who have addiction, you help yourself.
Yes.
The one thing that tipped the scale for me was your community service, your low risk assessment, and this is the only arrest on your record. So my vote or recommendation to the governor is to commute to sentence to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility. I think you've earned it.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Mr. Spencer, so you've received 4 votes recommending that your sentence be commuted to 99 years and that you become immediately parole eligible. So that is the recommendation we'll make on your behalf to Governor Andrews. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you.
So the governor did grant him that commutation, and now we're going to fast forward to 7/24/2024 to see his parole hearing. Now, this is no shoo-in by any stretch of the imagination, simply for the political reasons. Historically, a commutation happens. The board, if they approve, recommends to the governor. Governor gets it on his desk. He looks it over, signs it. Then and only then do you have a parole hearing with the parole board. And for the parole board to deny after they recommend to the governor to sign it wouldn't make a lot of sense. The governor would say, "What? Why you put me in this situation? You recommend parole and then I parole and you deny?" So I think we've seen a few times where it's happened. And in that case, maybe there's something going on in the background we weren't familiar about. Or maybe you did have a parole board member like Mr. O'Shea show up and say, "Not going to happen on my watch." Maybe the victim speaks, right? There are different reasons. Or maybe they get a write-up. In this situation, all those details, they're really thrown aside because it's a new governor. And for the most part, except for Mr. Freeman and Mr. Natsa, a new parole board. So they don't have that loyalty. They don't need to grant parole. And we've already seen a few commutations hearings that have gone to this new parole board and they just deny outright. So it's going to be interesting to see. Also, just on the note of Mr. Roche granting, this was a difficult case. And it's, I don't know what I would have done either. This one is tough. I'm happy I'm not in their shoes, but let's fast forward and jump in.
Would you state your name and DOC number, please?
Neil Spencer, DOC number 300641.
Okay. Mr. Spencer, I'm gonna read some preliminary information. Please stop me if I say anything incorrectly, okay?
Yes, sir.
You were convicted of second-degree murder, given a life sentence. You had a commutation hearing, and your sentence was commuted to 99 years. Your out dates are, your parole date is 11/16/2023. Your adjusted good time date is 12/10/2039. Your full term date is 6/4/2090. First, we're going to get a statement from you, and then we'll get statements for those that are in favor, and then those that are opposed. Is all the information I read to you correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. Introduce yourself. Tell us why should we consider paroling you today, and tell us about the offense. What happened?
My name is NEAL Spencer, and like you stated, in 1991, I was convicted of a second-degree murder. I take full responsibility of taking the life of McQueen Walker. I'm very sorry for what happened, very remorseful for what happened. It was just an incident where I was addicted to crack cocaine. I quit my last job about 2 weeks before. I went to pick up my last check. I spent it all on drugs. My idea was to maybe use half of it for my own recreational use. Mr. McQueen, at that time, I gave him the rest of the crack cocaine to hold for me. And after I used the portion that I kept for myself, I went back to Mr. McQueen and told him to give me the other half that I wanted. And it ended up into a verbal argument, and then it ended up to a physical fight. And he began to kind of get the best of me. So I pulled out my knife and I began to stab him until he cut me loose. That's what happened. That's what happened at that time. I pled guilty to a life sentence. I've been in Angola for about 33 years. Since I've been in Angola, my first beginning half of it was kind of a rough part of it. I kind of was doing pretty much the same thing I'd been doing since I was on the streets, except minus the drugs. When I got incarcerated, when in the parish jail, I stopped using drugs cold. I didn't need it anymore. But I will be a drug addict until the day I die. I understand that I'm a new creature in Christ, but any key, any trigger could put me back into the same position I was back then. So since I've been incarcerated, I've gained my GED. I've given my life to Christ. I begin to place myself around positive people, Christians. I went through drug programs that's been offered to me at Angola, as well as here at Grant Parish. I've pretty much done a lot of the certificate programs while I was at Angola, Louisiana. I'm still doing programs now here at Grant. I fought hard to try to better myself and make a better person and a better man out of myself. I think I've gained that, and I feel so much better now, being able to move around and not be known as a drug addict, as a crackhead or anything like that. But I think I deserve another opportunity in society, and I pray that the board could come to that decision as well.
Okay, thank you. Your case has been assigned to Mr. Prater. Mr. Prater, you have any questions for him?
I was waiting to kind of maybe hear the.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Let's go. We're gonna go to the those in support first. Mr. Kerry Myers with the Parole Project.
Good morning, board. My name is Kerry Myers with the Louisiana Parole Project. We're here to support Mr. Spencer. Should this board grant him parole today, and we ask that they do. Mr. Spencer has a long record of rehabilitation. It's what impresses us. Not only that, his character is. This program, as this board knows, is a voluntary program, and Mrs. Spencer is the type of person that we know will take full advantage of the things that we offer. His programming while he was incarcerated, his disciplinary record, the fact that he's earned not only his GED, but degrees in Christian ministry. He's volunteered to be a missionary, giving back, doing service for others. We just believe that the things that we can offer him in support once he is released will ensure that he has the best chance at success, and we fully believe in his success. He also is in the process of his ICOTS to Texas once he completes parole project. So we just ask this board to consider all those factors today and grant his release.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Myers. Mr. Devin Castile, cousin. Okay, Devin, tell us, you're on mute, Devin.
My name is Devin Castile. I'm the cousin of Neil Spencer. As Neil stated, approximately 30-something years ago, me and Neil began the life of addiction, both with the same drug of choice, crack cocaine. Unfortunately, Neil had to go to prison for 34 years, and my addiction led me to a lot more. I've been shot twice in the head. I've been shot twice in the chest. I've been to prison approximately 5 times. Fortunately, 7 years ago, I got introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I have approximately 7 years sober. I went back to school. I got me a bachelor's degree. I'm currently in a master's degree program, and I'm the program director at the Serenity Treatment Center of Louisiana. I know that if I can change my life and I can contribute more to society, I know that Neil can also. Throughout these 30-something years when I was out there, I would often talk to Neil on the phone, and he would be my sounding board. And I would wonder how such a person that's in prison for life can encourage a person who's on the streets that's dying. Neil has been an important part of my recovery. He's been an important part of my life, and I think that he can contribute to society. I ask that the board show compassion and have mercy and grace on Neil and grant him parole. Thank you all for letting me talk.
Okay, thank you for participating. We also had Brent Swallow, a cousin, in support, but he wishes not to speak. And Tori Castile, cousin, also in support and does not want to speak. In opposition, we have Miss Robin Walker, victims of family. Miss Walker. Okay, Deborah Walker. I'm gonna let you go first, Miss Walker.
Right here?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, good morning. I have brought up in a letter. I want to read it.
Yes, ma'am.
Parts of it, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
This is more. I'm writing this letter in behalf of my son, McQuinn Walker, who was a victim of a horrible, horrible crime. On June 6, 1991, my son McQuinn was brutally murdered with no mercy by NEAL Spencer. McQuinn was 15 years old at the time he was murdered, and NEAL Spencer was 22 years old. Mr. Spencer murdered my son in our own home. Early that morning, I came home and found my child full of blood, laying on the living room floor. Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
All I could do was cry with a loud scream, "Oh God, oh God." All that within me was a cry of anguish. And now, parole board on March 14th, 2022, there was a clemency hearing for Neal Spencer. It was like burying my child all over again. So much anguish as I say, "Oh God." And now this is what McQuinn's identical twin brother has to say to the board. Can you read it, Robin? Thank y'all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Robin Walker is going to be taking her place to read the rest of the letter and give his statement. Go ahead, Mr. Walker.
Says, to whom it may concern, and with all due respect to the Louisiana Parole Board, I attended the Zoom call in regards to the clemency of Neil Spencer, the one who murdered my brother in our home, June 6. We were young, we was also in the street life, but nothing warranted a brutal murder. At the parole board, Neil was asked what happened on a crime that night. And he lied. There's no way that somebody would owe him some money to that point. Honestly, I can understand somebody wanting to get out of prison. But I mean, if you change, be all the way changed. Just be honest with everything that was going on. That's all I really got to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walker. Okay, we have been joined by Sheriff McCain. Sheriff McCain, do you wish to give a statement? Ma'am?
I do. As a parent, I can't imagine what the family went through. I didn't know Neil Spencer then 30 years ago, but I've had the opportunity to get to know him the last couple of years. The first thing that caught my attention about Neil when I interviewed him in Angola was that he did not blame anybody for what had happened in the past. He took full responsibility and was very forthcoming about his actions and the pain that he had caused to the family of the victim. And he has continued to do that. He's an inmate pastor here at the Grant Parish Detention Center, but he also has been involved with the elementary schools and the high schools throughout Grant Parish over the last few years, talking to children about consequences and about the realities of making terrible decisions and where that takes you in life. He's also he's gone with me and spoken at a number of churches throughout Grant Parish, and just as recently as this past Sunday, and he starts every conversation with the reason that he's in jail, and the terrible things that led him to prison and the family that he hurt so bad. I truly believe that Neil Spencer is not a threat to society if you were to make this decision today. And I will tell you that in 12 years as the sheriff of Grant Parish, this is only the second time that I've spoken in support of someone.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff. Next, we'll have Miss Pamela Cruz from the 31st District Attorney.
I'm Pam Cruz. I'm the Victims Assistance Coordinator with the 31st Judicial District Attorney's Office. It is the position of our office that Mr. Spencer's request for parole should be denied. And we believe that with additional insight into particulars of this matter, you will agree with our position. I want you to consider many of the relevant factors that a sentencing judge should evaluate when deciding what is appropriate term of imprisonment for a specific defendant, and to consider such a decision making process. During the early morning hours of June 6, 1991, Neil Spencer looked over at his friend and said, "Man, I feel like crying." His depraved state of mind and debased value of human life led to the senseless and the extremely brutal murder of his victim, McQuinn Walker. It is quite important to note that McQuinn Walker was only 15 years old at the time he was killed. Neil Spencer invaded the victim's home and stabbed him repeatedly. In fact, he stabbed his victim so many times that Neil Spencer himself lost count. Neil Spencer slaughtered the victim in the victim's own home and left his blood-covered body there for his mother to find. The assistant district attorneys who were working for the office at the time this crime occurred stated that this was a case that stays in their mind as one of the most gruesome crime scenes they've ever seen. Neil Spencer, as a part of the plea bargaining process, subsequently entered a guilty plea to the offense of second-degree murder and agreed to accept a sentence of life in prison without parole. We ask that you consider the following aggravating factors associated with this murder. A commutation of Neil Spencer's current life sentence without parole to one of 99 years with parole eligibility deprecated the seriousness of the defendant's crime. The heinous nature of this murder and manner in which Mr. Spencer was killed, Mr. Walker warrants a sentence of life. Mr. Spencer's required compliance with the prison rules and regulations is grossly outweighed by the seriousness of his crime. Nothing that Neil Spencer has said or did since his barbaric act has changed the facts. Neil Spencer's conduct during the commission of this murder manifested deliberate cruelty towards his victim. Neil Spencer knew or should have known that his victim, McQuinn Walker, was particularly vulnerable given his tender age of 15 years old and status as a minor. Neil Spencer used extreme, unmerciful violence during the commission of his crime against Mr. Walker. Neil Spencer used a dangerous weapon in the commission of his crime against the victim, McQuinn Walker. There's no one item of any evidence of any grounds which would have excused or otherwise justified Neil Spencer's cold-blooded, ruthless, and wanton murder of Mr. Walker. Violent crimes and murders have been on the rise in the United States during the recent years. Louisiana's homicide rates at the same time have been either at or near the top of the crime statistics. The reason why we have prisons is to protect our society from people like Neil Spencer. Mr. Spencer's presentation to the board was that his deeds over the past 30 years have outweighed the bad. However, what the mother of McQuinn Walker heard is that his deeds outweighed the life of her deceased son. While Mr. Spencer has been allowed to live the past 30 years of his life, it's been different from Ms. Walker's son. He was taken away from her at age 50. The family of McQuinn Walker desires justice. And the justice means that Neil Spencer truly take responsibility for his horrendous criminal act and serve the entire sentence. After careful consideration, the district attorney's office sides with the family and opposes the granting of parole of Neil Spencer. We hope that you adopt this position at will, and thank you for your consideration. We also request, should you grant the parole, that Mr. Spencer have to relocate outside the parish of Davis. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, now we'll go to Mr. Prater. Mr. Prater?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Neil. Nice to see you and everybody that's involved in this hearing. This is a especially difficult one because it appears that you are remorseful. It appears that you've done the things that we would expect while incarcerated. So I just have a couple of things to ask you. I was curious, what was he doing with your cocaine again?
I gave him half of it just to hold for me until, if I needed it again, I would be able to go and get it from him. I was a drug user, and I didn't want to use all the drugs up. And I felt if I would have kept it on my person at the same, all of it at the same time, I would end up using it all up in one time.
Okay, was he a drug user himself? I know you don't want to disparage him because of the situation, but was he involved in drugs also?
I don't believe he was a drug user, not to my knowledge. That's why I had gave it to him to hold for me, because I know he wouldn't use it, but I would.
Okay. All right. That's all the questions that I have.
Okay, Ms. Renatson?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Spencer, I mean, what led to the fight? He wouldn't give you your cocaine back, or what made you get violent like that? I mean, it was a very brutal murder.
Yes, sir. We ended up having a argument about giving me the drugs back. He said he wasn't giving it back to me. So we just kind of argued about that for a little while, and we started to get physical. He wanted me to leave, and I said I was trying to tell him to just give me my drugs back so I can go. And then we ended up getting into a fist fight, and I pulled out my knife and stabbed him repeatedly because he began to get the best of me.
Okay, so the 15-year-old was beating up the 22-year-old. What you tell him?
Kind of the way, yes, sir. I was addicted to drugs. I wasn't as big as I was now.
Okay, I understand. Just a question. Okay, I have no further questions. Is the panel ready to vote?
I'd like to move for an executive session.
I'll second.
Okay, we've had a motion for an executive session by Mr. Prater, second by Mr. Natsa. Please call the roll.
General Renata,
Yes.
Steve Freeman,
Yes.
Yes.
Steve Prayer,
Yes.
Session now from executive session. Has that been approved?
It has not been turned in yet. We have to wait for the board's approval or deny to turn it in, but it will be expedited upon turning it in.
Okay, Mr. Prater, are we ready to vote now?
Yes, sir. Do we, as a point of order, do we need to vote back in from executive session?
Do we need to call the board back to order? Yeah, let's call the board back to order, please. 9:36.
General Renata,
Sorry. Yes.
Steve Freeman,
Yes.
Steve Prayer.
Yes.
Okay, now is the panel ready to vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Prater, you first because the case was assigned to you.
Okay, it's a very difficult vote for me. This is what makes being on the parole board not fun. Otherwise it's pretty enjoyable when you got to make hard decisions and you have such victim opposition and you have the DA against it, then you have the sheriff for it who knows him and has gotten to know him. His record is it's indisputable that he's done what's expected of him in jail and plus then some. I think because he's been in jail for now well over 30 years, he's made a real transformation. He did this act in time when he was under the influence of crack cocaine, and he had basically no other criminal activity prior to that, except one little marijuana deal, I think, that was dropped. I think all those things, it's contrary to my nature, but I'm going to give him a chance, and I'm going to, my vote is to grant parole, providing that he gets everything straight and heads over to Texas.
Okay, Ms. Renatsa?
Yes, thank you. I want to thank the Walker family for coming and participating today. Your comments are very meaningful to us, and your participation is. And I appreciate the opposition to parole, both by the victim's family and the district attorney's office. I voted for Mr. Spencer when he had his pardon hearing. I believe that his time in prison has provided him with time to reflect and really give back to his community within the prison setting, those that he can help. He's done that. The risk assessment used by the Department of Corrections indicates that he's a low risk to reoffend. I do not believe he is a public safety risk. The comments by Sheriff McCain are very impactful and meaningful, at least to me. While, again, as I said, I appreciate the opposition to parole. Parole does not erase what he did. Mr. Spencer still must remain accountable for what he did and make amends in his community. I would vote to grant his parole to the out-of-state plan, so that would have to be approved first and work with the parole project. Add a special condition: he cannot return to Jeff Davis Parish. He has to have no contact with the victim's family whatsoever, and that when in Texas, that you do perform 6 hours of community service work each month, speaking to at-risk youth. That's my vote, Mr. Spencer. Good luck.
Okay, I also concur. I also voted for him at his pardon hearing. Mr. Spencer, you cannot leave the parole project without an approved residence plan to Texas. Okay? If not, if we're gonna find you housing outside of Jeff Davis Parish, I do not want you around these around the victims. So, that's my vote for today. This hearing is closed at 9:40.
Thank you so much.
That was.
And they granted, and it's tough. You hear the mother come up and speak, and it is so raw. It is so painful. It's as if it just happened yesterday, and that is the pain that. And Mr. Prater, what he said, I couldn't have said it better myself. I couldn't imagine being in that situation. You hear the family, you hear their pain, and then you have to come up and make a decision. And I think you make the argument, I mean, with the amount of time that he served and how he's done locked up, how can you say no? And I've always had the counter argument, well, it's simple. If there's family that doesn't want it and they're going to feel victimized again, you say no. But in many of those cases, it was less time. They served 18 years, they served 20 years. Oh man. It's brutal. It's tough, but it seemed that he took accountability straight up. Interesting that he only, as Bella said earlier, waited just 2 months before the sentencing. And I think there's two ways to look at it. One is he was basically manipulated, screwed over in some way to just take that guilty plea. Or he really felt true guilt and just wanted to spend the rest of his life in prison. The reason I say that is because the DA will say, hey, you're going to face the death penalty. But any attorney would say, no, let's go through the process. Let's go through discovery. Let's see what type of case we have. I mean, he skipped all of that and just said, yeah, I'm going to go to life in prison without the opportunity of parole, which was why, going back, Mr. Marbella was just shocked by that. And and I guess you can look at it however way you want. Was he railroaded? Was it and we have seen this happen before though. And it is pretty bizarre because again, this is the type of case where maybe he could have said it was self-defense and this, or is manslaughter or not. I don't know. But anyways, another mistake that I think that was made in the process was having the sheriff speak when it was the victim's turn to speak. He was supposed to speak first in support, so that was awkward and a pretty sad mistake. At the same time, it was shocking to see the sheriff come up and speak in support. It probably is one of the most notable supports we've ever heard, in my opinion. And it's just contrasting and unique because the sheriff's department always has a blanket no. And Sheriff Brady, you might have seen that case. I loved hearing it. He because of that blanket no from the sheriff department, he actually said in one parole hearing, I don't give it any credence because they just say no to everything. So it doesn't hold weight with me. He said that. I love that he said that because it really rubs me the wrong way when the sheriff's department blanket no for everybody, regardless. And that's poison, in my opinion. That's us versus them mentality and culture. It's poison. It's insane because some people have earned parole and they just say no to everyone. Stupid. And I hope that changes with the new sheriff in town. Maybe things will change in that sense. But I don't have any information to share. What I do want to say is we are going to be having a lot of these parole hearings coming up. Richard makes it not just easy, makes it automatic basically to set up the commutation hearing with the parole hearing. It could be a 4-year-old commutation hearing. Why I like this is it's great to connect the dots and we get to go back and see Mr. Roche and Miss Jackson. And in this case, it was Mr. Marabella hearing. I would have, of course, wanted to see more Mr. Roche and Miss Jackson in this hearing, but we do have plenty coming up along the line. So it's all in the spreadsheet. Richard connects the dots, and I just glue it together in the editing software. So anyways, you tell me, this was a tough case, but you tell me what you think was right. And with that, I'll let you go.